And with that being said, let's get to probably, at least in my opinion, both the most entertaining and the most impactful game of the week in terms of playoff ramifications, because the Kansas City Chiefs are now on the back foot. They are no longer the number one seed in the AFC because of those dastardly Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow taking them down. It was a hell of a game for a lot of reasons. I know, Chiefs fans, you're going to scream about refs and a missed false start and a hands to the face penalty in the end zone. You feel like you got cheated out of an opportunity to come back and maybe win. I get that. But I'll tell you what, if you didn't give up literally 1 billion yards to Jamar Chase, you probably would have had a better chance to win in the first place. They were up by 2 touchdowns, not once, but twice. They put up 28 points in the first half. They were firmly in control of the game, and they let Cincy come back. And this is something that I think we've seen far too many times from the Chiefs, where they explode early, defenses adjust, they start shutting them down in the second half, and then for whatever reason, Kansas City historically, a lot of times, runs out of steam. And I think going up against an explosive or an equally explosive offense that can just kind of stay with them and weather that early first half storm that Kansas City historically puts up on people, if they can just stay within striking range, usually in the second half, Kansas City starts to falter a little bit, in my experience. Look back at last year, the Tampa Bay game. Again, it was a similar kind of thing. They put up, I think it was also 28 points in the first half. Just completely wrecked the Buccaneers. Buccaneers made some changes in the second half defensively, made it a game by the end of the fourth quarter. I mean, that was a very, very close game by the last 5 minutes. The difference was Tampa last year wasn't kind of keeping up on offense in the first half, so it was too much of a gap to overcome in the second half, whereas Kansas City, went into halftime. This time, it was only a 9-point game. Bengals were able to keep up with them pretty well and just kind of stay within striking distance so that they could come back at the second half. So this game, to me, kind of reinforced some of the concerns that I've had with the Chiefs over the last couple years in terms of inconsistency. And I think it also reinforced my feelings on Cincinnati's offense, which is you can be schematically perfect. You can have structurally the right call in place. But I'll tell you what, unless you have 3 Pro Bowl corners, you're probably still not going to hold them down forever, because their receivers are, versus 99% of teams out there, their receivers are just better than you. And I think that showed up.
Yeah, this for me really reinforced a couple things, and you touched on it at the top, which is Jamar Chase was absolutely the right pick for this team this year. And there was a lot of debate. And look, Cincinnati still needs offensive line help. A lot of it. It showed up in this game. But that doesn't invalidate their pick of Chase. In fact, this game validated their pick of Jamar Chase, because this game came down to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase changes Cincinnati's ability to keep up with explosive teams. He can flip the tables at a moment's notice. He did it in the first half to keep them close and not be buried by Kansas City or anybody else's onslaught. Oh yeah, you can do that? We can do that right now too. Watch. Bam. 65, 70 yards. We got ours. What do you got? And they did it all game. I put out a tweet that said the Bengals are now like the boxer that can take a punch. Right? They're not being down a score, being down 2 scores. That's okay. We got ours. Watch this. Bam. And it's Jamar Chase. Like T. Higgins, really good. Tyler Boyd, excellent as a third receiver. Jamar Chase is the guy. You can throw it to Jamar Chase on any play, and it's a bit like Tyreek Hill was a couple of years ago. He could score from anywhere, anytime, and just bury you. And that changes the entire complexion of Cincinnati, their ability to respond, how dangerous they are in the playoffs, whether or not they're a Super Bowl contender, and I don't say that lightly. Like, he is the guy. And that long reception in the first half that got them back in the running and made it a game before halftime was absolute evidence that things have changed. And look, if this is a year ago, last year's Bengals or 2 years ago, certainly, forget it. Kansas City's not worried about the refs. They're not worried about Cincinnati. This is a write-off game. This is a rest our starters game. Pre-Burrow, pre-Chase, this is not a worry. Burrow, okay, maybe, but he still doesn't have enough weapons, let's be honest.
Burrow plus Chase.
Burrow plus Chase. Oh, hey, we need some calls, right? Because we're gonna, as you said, not even make some mistakes. We're gonna get burned by that. We're gonna give up some long touchdowns, even though schematically, man for man, we were in a decent position. Mina Kimes put up the dots of when Chase caught the ball and said,
"He just posted up."
Jamar Chase turned this into a touchdown. He's surrounded by 4 Kansas City defenders. Like, that's the X factor. That's the difference. And that makes these Bengals a completely different team. So in terms of Chase or Sewell, like, Chase all day long after this game. He makes them a legitimate threat. And again, we talked about it last week on the Lost Podcast. They talked about it on the broadcast. They called it the baby Bengals. Basically 5 Bengals starters on offense, the skill positions, who are all under 25. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be around. 2 of them are 25. 2 of them are less than that. And, one of them's really young. Like, you got Mixon and Burrow both at 25. You got Chase. You got T. Higgins. You got Tyler Boyd. And, Uzama's a decent tight end on top of that, a 6th offensive threat. Like,
6th guy, yeah.
This is not a team that's going anywhere, and they are built for boat racing and track meets. And that's the modern passing NFL. They're going to be around. They're going to be a factor. They won their division for the first time in forever. This was a team that people, including us, said, they're probably coming up. They're going to be like mid. I don't think they're going to win the AFC North, but they're going to compete this year. They're going to go farther than that, folks.
And this was the scenario that Bengals fans were hoping for when they took Burrow first overall.
100%.
Which was within 2 years, they're in contention for the first seed in the AFC. There's still plausible scenarios that they get the first seed. I was actually looking at it earlier today. I'll pull it up right now because I didn't even realize it was still possible until I read this. But going into this week, they can get the number 1 seed, which they're 10-6 right now. They can go 11-6. If they win, Tennessee loses, which they've already lost to Houston this year. It's not that crazy. Tennessee loses, and Kansas City loses, and New England loses. New England against Miami, Kansas City against Denver, like, it's not impossible.
It's not likely, not impossible, but it's not impossible.
It's not likely.
Yeah.
But if you told me going into this season that, like, hey, it's week 18 and the Bengals have like a non-zero chance of getting the first seed if stuff breaks their way. Oh, and by the way, they just clinched the AFC North by beating Kansas City. I would have thought you were crazy. And now look at us.
Fully agree. This is a sea change. We knew that Burrow had the juice before he hurt his knee last year. He made enough plays regularly behind 0 offensive line help while getting massacred to make you think, nope, this guy's it. They got their quarterback. We said that last year on the podcast. Nope, they didn't make a mistake. They got their guy. They can now go forward and build around him. So this is absolutely the scenario that Bengals fans were hoping for. They were hoping we were right. They were hoping that Cincinnati would add weapons. They did both those things. They added not just a weapon. Like, we need to talk about the fact that Jamar Chase is giving Justin Jefferson a little garbage about breaking his year-old record. And he said, oh, no, I'm going to rip him about it. I'm going to call him up, make sure he knows I did it. Like, they're good-natured, but still, like, they didn't just get a weapon. They got a guy that's like, in the top 10 in receiving in the NFL as a rookie? Like,
might be top 5.
He's creeping up after that game. I mean, it's so
but
funny.
It's not even like Julio Jones numbers where he puts up 1 million yards and like 3 touchdowns. It's like, oh, by the way, he also has double-digit touchdowns. Like, he does everything.
Yeah, can score from anywhere on the field, can pick up a key first down, contested catch, outrun defensive backs. Like, this is not a guy that's good. This is a guy in the Justin Jefferson mold, and I don't say that lightly because I think that guy's a top 5 receiver in the NFL overall. in his second season, they got that guy. Like we say there's a lot of receivers available, and there are, and there's very good ones that can fill roles. There's not a lot of those guys. Those guys are rare. When Devontae Adams looks at a Justin Jefferson and says, no, he's a guy I watch. He's doing it the right way. Like, he's farther along at his point than I was at mine in year 2. You listen, because Devontae Adams is clearly the best receiver in the NFL. People are going to say the same thing, if they're not already, about Jamar Chase really quickly. They got that guy, and that's not a guy you get at 28. That's not a guy you get, second round, third round, unless you're extremely lucky or there's something else going on. That's a guy you get in the top 10. They got him there. He's making the difference he's supposed to, and it is a completely different team because of it.
I'm really excited to see how far this Bengal team goes, because I really think that the key to being like an actual Super Bowl contender is quarterback and weapons. If you got those two things, even if you just have an average defense, you can win. Like, Kansas City didn't win the Super Bowl because of Steve Spagnuolo holding down Jimmy Garoppolo. They won it because Pat Mahomes retreated 14 yards behind the line of scrimmage and threw a crazy-ass ball on wasps to Tyreek Hill. And, Travis Kelce making plays. And, like, that's why they won. Like, obviously the defense helps, and the defense in the regular season this year, was able to help Kansas City survive long enough for the offense to get back on track. But Steve Spagnuolo's defense is not why people consider Kansas City a frontrunner. It's Mahomes, it's Tyreek, it's Kelce, it's Andy Reid, it's all those guys. So if you want to be an actual contender for a Super Bowl, you need to have a quarterback and you need to have weapons, and Cincinnati's got that. So as far as I'm concerned, they're in it. Like, they're in that group of, like, not just, they're one and done, or, it's a feel-good story, they made it. It's like, oh no, shit, like, they're real, like, they can do this thing. Burrow, he's a serial killer. Jamar Chase, he's a freak. Higgins, he's a monster. Boyd, best number 3 in the league. Mixon, freak. And by the way, the defense is at least average.
Interesting fact, if I asked you where they are in sacks as a team, what number rank would you say they are in sacks? Cincinnati. Not a huge sack team.
Well, it seems like every time I watch them, I see that defensive line all over people, so gotta be top 10.
The Titans and the Bengals have the same number of sacks. They're tied for 10th. If I'd said that to you, if I'd said that to you before the season, you would have been like, well, I don't know, the Bengals are all right, but, like, the Titans line is really good.
That's the thing, is like that they're sneaky in so many different ways.
Yeah, and they got Jesse
Bates. The offense
Bates.
gets a lot of the publicity, but
yeah, and they're hanging out.
Bates is tremendous.
Bates is tremendous in the back end. They've gotten really good play out of their corners, including free agents. The linebackers we really like. They invested heavily in linebackers last year. Some of those guys have been injured. Jermaine Pratt didn't play in this game. So they're good enough on defense, and on offense, if they're clicking right now, no one wants to play them. Like, no defensive coordinator in their right mind is like, give me that.
I'll bet you Kansas City doesn't either, because remember, I brought up that Tampa game in the regular season last year. Well, when they faced Tampa again, Tampa just did the thing they did in the second half over again, and they fucking killed them. Like, yeah, we could talk about offensive line injuries for Kansas City, but, like, schematically, they couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't just a protection issue. Nobody was open. And I worry that the Bengals, who in the first half did the thing that really, really bothers me, that teams do against Kansas City, is they sit there in a single high structure and they say, we're in cover 3, and then they dare Pat to not just hit endless crossing routes and deep sevens and all that kind of stuff, and they got murdered in the first half. Absolutely murdered, because they just sat there in single high structures and Pat was throwing bombs down the field. And then in the second half, they adjusted. What I worry about for Kansas City is if they have to play Cincinnati again, they're just going to take that second half game plan, just like Tampa did, put it in the first half, and say, now what you got? Can you beat us when we're in quarters? Can you beat us when we're in cover 2? Can you beat us when we're showing too high and then coming down to one cross and trapping you over the middle? What do you got? Historically speaking, Kansas City has struggled against those kind of looks. They've gotten a little bit better this year, but they're still not like amazing. What do they got? And I worry about Kansas City. I really do. Obviously, Mahomes is amazing. Tyreek, Kelsey, all of them, like they're all top tier for a reason. But this has been a problem for years now. And I feel like if the Bengals come with the exact same adjustment, it might not be as close as it was this time.